Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Alex's Afternoon Art Show. Today we are going to be drawing Beast from the X-Men, and I'm going to be talking about posing. I think posing is predominantly what we're going to be talking about here, because we're doing a bit of a different pose. We've got a lot of hunching in, a lot of sort of dynamic posing in ways that we wouldn't normally use it a lot of the time. A lot of the time I wouldn't necessarily do a pose that conceals most of the body, but here we've got a pose that conceals quite a bit of the body. We're also going to have to talk a little bit about proportioning, because I will have to reproportion some of this, which is fun. I say that sarcastically. Because, yeah, reproportioning is annoying when we have to do it, and we're going to have to do it here. Quite simply, I'm looking at this and I'm going to have to reproportion it. It's annoying, but it has to be done. Anyways, yeah. I'll roll the intro and then I'll show you what I have. Okay, so this is where we're at. A few things will probably cross your mind. For one, it doesn't look quite big enough. Beast is usually pretty big. Like he's pretty wide usually. Here I'd say this partly comes down to the fact of him being hunched in. He doesn't quite look big enough. The other thing is that his hair looks too big. So what we're going to have to do in terms of reproportioning is I'm going to have to make his body bigger and his head smaller. And that should, in theory, fix the hair problem. Although, who knows? But we'll do that in a minute. Firstly, I want to talk a little bit about posing, because that is not going to change. So, Beast as a character usually is again quite big, quite hunched, like an animal, you might think. And so for this, what I wanted was a pose of him sort of leaping in, but not kind of like we've done a lot of jumping poses, a lot of sort of mid-air poses in the past, and I feel like I wanted to try something a little different. And so what I decided to do is I decided to have him sort of lunging in like this, because that's a sort of a pretty common Beast pose. Is his sort of the one arm as with this one, which goes straight down, covering a lot of the body, as if he's sort of like sort of leaping over something, that he's sort of flung himself over something. Or in this instance, it's more posed. Here, like he's sort of done a little scratch at something. I guess is sort of what I was thinking. Maybe. I'm not sure what I was thinking. But yeah. Some of this I also did to try and conceal parts of the design that I don't want to have to deal with. So the only change here that I've made in terms of the design is I have made his hair very big, which it shouldn't be this big. And I've made his eyebrows pretty big. They're fine. I think his eyebrows are actually a decent enough size. And I've made his mutton chops much bigger. And maybe they don't need to be this big either. Some of this could definitely be reduced. I think a lot of the head hair could be reduced, and his head could even be a bit wider, to be honest. His head could be wider, his hair could be shorter, and his body also needs to be wider. I think basically everything about this just needs to be wider. What if I literally just did that? What if I did just a straight just transform this thing, just make it a bit wider? Widen him out a bit like that. Even maybe a tiny bit more. How does that look for the head? I mean, it kind of doesn't look too bad. Probably need to change the eyes a little bit. Maybe I can reduce that a little bit. Maybe I can reduce that a tiny bit. So, no, that's the wrong layer selected. So I can still do a bit of a transform, just widen him out a tiny bit. Not a huge amount, because bear in mind we are also going to be changing the shape of his head and stuff like this. So it is maybe worth just widening him out for stuff like that. And then we're going to get our selection tool. We're going to have to do this very carefully. I can't go in that much. I have to be zoomed out. We zoomed out to about here, and then I'm gonna have to do something like this. I'll be very careful have to go around all of these lines. We just get the head, more or less. Right. So now we've grabbed the body, so we want to make the body a bit larger. Maybe even a bit wider. The problem is making it wider is that it's not necessarily going to fit the shape that we currently have in terms of his body as it stands. So we're going to make it just a tiny bit larger again, I would say, and we are just going to have to connect up some of those lines which are now loose. So now let's see how that looks. That's quite an improvement, I would say, in terms of the size. It's definitely more like what we want. It should be big. Even still, I will probably use the details to make him bigger whenever I'm drawing it in. So he's bigger and wider, which is what we wanted. And that's just, again, reproportioning things can be annoying. It's not necessarily challenging, it's just an annoying thing to have to do, because in so doing, in terms of like changing the size of things, these lines were drawn at a specific size. And whenever you're dealing with digital art, they can become blurry or sort of bleary in areas, and it can be very annoying to deal with. Now, mercifully, we're doing this in our base sketch. This isn't really the type of thing we could do to a finished drawing. Obviously, for the level that some of these lines are now like kind of broken, but that's not the most important part of it. It's more so like the slight blurriness. Again, it's like not even really noticeable here. But yeah, if we were to do that on a larger scale, that might create more blurriness, which again we really don't want to have to deal with. It can be annoying to have to sort of work with that. Again, it's not the type of thing you can do to a finished drawing. Not that I would, because by that point I would usually be just sort of over the whole thing. But yeah, so now that he's much bigger, he's sort of more in line with the shape that I wanted. I will probably make him, as I said, a tiny bit bigger, even still, in the details. I'll probably make a few changes. Like I'll probably make his eyes a little bit smaller, because his eyes don't need to be that big now that his body's been adjusted, or now that his head's been widened and stuff like that. His nose, I think, is probably fine. His mouth is fine. It's just sort of, yeah, the eyes need to be reduced a tiny bit, the hair needs to be reduced a little bit, and the mutton chops need to be reduced a little bit, I would say. These mutton chops are normally reserved, I would say. They're normally not that huge. It depends. Some artists make them bigger. They're usually a bit more reserved than what I've gone for here. I do think I will reduce them. Not hugely, but I'll reduce them a little bit, because they're just a bit too big. I think it's a little much, I think, is maybe what I've got here. But yeah, I'll reduce those a tiny bit, and I'll definitely reduce his hair. His hair is too big. That's for sure. It's just sort of a bit too vertical, I think. The width, I think, is okay. I think it's just a bit too, goes up a bit too much. But yeah, the design I have made a tiny adjustment to, in that he's got, instead of his little sort of Speedo situation, he's got shorts, actually long shorts. Again, it is a minor change, and there's a little bit of design on them there, and that's it. And there'll just be a bit of yellow and then the dark blue that normally would go there. So again, it's not major changes, but you know, these are the things that you do. But yeah, one of the things which I wanted to mention actually about the pose is the way that his hand curls up, because I think I like the way that looks. It looks a bit more sort of animalistic, and that's something which I didn't really think too much about whenever I was doing it, but I was like, oh yeah, no, that sort of fits, because of the sort of animalistic thing. I did something similar whenever I drew Blanca at this point, many months ago. I drew Blanca, and I gave him sort of these curled up hands, because that looks, it makes them look a bit more like a monkey. And in the case of Blanca, he's got the whole sort of like kind of weird gorilla thing going on, and Beast definitely has that energy as well. So it makes sense to a degree for this pose of where, especially if he is sort of jumping, it makes sense for him to be sort of curling his hands forward, like almost like a revving motion. Because whenever a monkey is sort of pushing themselves, they'll push themselves by their knuckles, and so, well, in terms of a gorilla specifically, they'll push themselves on their knuckles, and they'll then bend their arm forward like that. So it sort of makes a degree of sense. It's maybe a little looser than how a monkey might do it, but you know, I just felt like it added something. Anyways, I've been rambling for nearly 12 minutes, so I think I will probably just start these details, and then I'll be back to do the colors, which should, you know, be pretty quick, even though it's all blue, more or less. Anyways, I'll do this and then I'll be back. So yeah. Alright, that's our details done. So that didn't take too long, I just took an enormous amount of breaks. I've been very lazy on this one. But yeah, something which I actually didn't mention before, which is technically a posing element, which I probably should have mentioned before, is his feet. Specifically the way that his toes are. It's something which I decided to put in a detail of because I thought it'd be interesting. His toes, aside from his index toes, his big toes, are all curled up as if he's getting ready to grab something with his feet. I just thought that'd be neat. Or as if he just kicked off of something with his feet and he's starting to get ready to grab again because he has fully posable toes. That is a detail of his character. He can grab things with his feet. And I was like, oh, may as well throw something like that in there. Thought it'd be neat. Anyways, he's definitely a bit meatier now than he was before. And that's something which I feel like is necessary with Beast's body type, is even though he's sort of big and buff, I always envisioned him as having something of a huggable body type. So he's generally pretty bulky in that sense. Bulky, but also sort of stocky. Not necessarily sort of like huge and ripped. It's more so sort of like big. Is his kind of frame. But yeah, next on the agenda is the colours, which should not take very long, given that there is, very few of them. Because I mean, yeah, I could probably count on one hand how many colours we have. I'm going to delineate between his primary body, primary sort of skin tone, I guess, and the hair on his head. Just so that the hair on his head has a slightly different color, maybe a bit of a richer blue or something like that. Something where it just stands out a little bit, but it's not like super distinct. And then obviously the trunks have a different color to them. So yeah, but predominantly here we're dealing with blue, so our background is going to be, as you might have guessed, blue. So yeah, I don't think there's a huge amount I need to cover, really, to be honest. I think the rest of this should be very fast. Yeah, I don't envision much of the rest of this taking very long. So I think I'll just do these colors and then I'll come back. I don't know, I don't think I really want to do anything crazy with the background, but I might just add a few speed lines or something maybe to make the background look a little bit more interesting, because there's not much that'll be going on otherwise. So I don't know, I'll have a think about it. Maybe I'll throw in a few speed lines. If I do, I'll do that in this section. If I'm not going to do it, I won't do it at all. So we'll see what I manage, or we'll see what I decide to do anyways. We'll see. It's not the end of the world. Anyways, I'll continue. Alright, that is our colours and our background done. I added some very light speed lines aside from here and here where I decided to make them more intense for some reason. I'm not changing it now. I decided to make them more intense over here because he's moving towards this location and away from this one, so that's the logic, I guess. These are, over here, they're thinner, milder speed lines that are a little bit more compact, whereas over here they're more spread out and they're longer. So it adds, I guess, in terms of intensity, which is what they're supposed to add, they add a little bit. So yeah, now it is time for the painted shading. One of the things which I did in the colors, which is extremely subtle, is the color difference in his hair on his head versus just his regular skin and other hair. I made that just all the same uniform color, whereas his sort of his head hair is a bit darker, ever so slightly duller and darker. So yeah, I also made the trunks. They're usually dark blue, but in some incarnations they're also black. I decided to keep them dark blue. There's a bit more yellow on the trunks as well. There otherwise isn't any aside from the belt, usually. So I decided just to have the yellow have like a strip along the side of his legs, just because that adds a bit more yellow to the design. So that he's got a bit more of the X-Men colors going on there with the blue and yellow. But yeah, that's all the real sort of changes or modifications I made to the design. In that respect, I've already selected a color palette. As you might expect, it's just blue. So yeah, that will be what influences our painted shading and detailed shading. So, you know, there's not much to discuss there. I've already kind of covered everything I needed to, so I think without further ado I will just continue. So yeah, I will do this painted shading and then I'll be back to do the last stuff. So yeah. Alright, that's our painted shading done. Again, nothing much crazy that had to be done there, I just did painted shading. Yeah, I don't think there's anything really I need to cover all that much with the painted shading. There's no sort of extra little details or anything that I really wanted to add. Realistically, all I have to do now is I have to do the detailed shading, the light line, and the first gradient map, and as has become very obvious, we're dealing with a lot of blue. So stuff like our yellow here, which is a prominent color, has become a little green, and it's probably going to get greener as time goes on. And the fact that there is a tiny bit of red in there is going to become unnoticeable very soon. Yeah. Well, anyways, I think I will just carry on and then we'll wrap up. So yeah, I'll do the detailed shading, the light line, and the first gradient map, and then I will be back to wrap up. So yeah. Alright, that is our detailed shading, light line, and last gradient map. More or less done. I just need to pick a layer type. I think we're going to stick with soft white because that keeps some of our yellow. We're going to turn it down to, I think actually if you turn it down to 60% is probably what I want. I don't want it to be too overpowering. I mean, we've still got it's still going to be very blue, but we don't want to do too much. I mean, again, I set this up where it's pretty much all blue. Something with today here, which I don't know how much that's going to factor in, is that the second lightest tone is actually darker than the middle tone, which I wouldn't normally do. I'd normally have it be a pretty clean gradient, outside of a few sort of edge cases where I need to where I'm really particular about where certain colors go. I've decided to sort of dull out that second to last, that second lightest tone, because I just don't want, because the main blue color sits in that middle area, so I don't want that to get too washed out by being too dark. So that's what I've gone for here, and we'll see how that works. So, right. Now I can start making my duplicates. So we're going to want luminosity, which depending on where we put this is going to get very dull. I think we want it to stay vivid, so I'm going to put it low and underneath everything. 20% seems acceptable. Now we're going to need another duplicate, and this one is going to be a color burn, because that will make everything vivid again. I think it's actually fine above everything. It's a little light. It's a little lighter above everything, but I think we can leave it at 10%, and that'll maybe work. Okay, so now I need to grab my texture. Yeah, this one hasn't been so difficult, to be honest. So this has been a very easy one, and it's been a while since I recorded one of these, so I suppose that's nice at least to have an easy one. Because yeah, some of these can be challenging, can be very challenging. It depends on the day I do them, I guess. I'm tired today, so it's good that this one is easy. But yeah, this one has also taken me all day because I've been taking it pretty easy. But yeah, what are we going to want out of our texture? Nothing too much. I'd say 15% is probably good enough. How does that look now? Doesn't overpower anything. It keeps our blues barely visible. It just sort of adds a bit more cleanliness to the gradient, or not even cleanliness, the opposite of that. A little bit more sort of bleariness to the gradient in the background, which is kind of what I want. It's usually what I want out of that anyways. Yeah. But yeah, this one hasn't been so bad. Not to say that they're usually bad, but that it can be challenging to complete them in the time that I set for myself. It's been a while now since I've had to split one up, which is good because I had to do that quite a lot for a period of time. But at least I'm not having to do that recently, and I'm hoping that that can continue. But yeah, I mean, that's it. I think that's us. I think I have a bit of a problem with these videos, which is that I usually say everything that I want to say within the first 10 minutes of the recording, and these are 4-hour recordings. So yeah, I really maybe should find things to say that occupy more of the space. However, I feel like once we get the ball rolling, I kind of just want to keep the drawing going and not have to keep pausing for 10 minutes at a time. So maybe this is fine. Maybe this format works. I don't know. I'll have a think about it, and if there's any sort of formatting changes that I decide to make, I guess I'll make them. But yeah, this one, nice and easy. Nice and easy one to come back to. It's been a while since I've missed, I suppose it's been a while since I've sort of missed any recordings or anything like that, so I mean, I usually don't. But obviously doing these every 2 weeks has definitely freed up a little bit more sort of time to cook these. But yeah, I've been able to get them done in more reasonable time in recent memory. However, a lot of these are recorded very far in advance. But anyways, I think it's time to wrap up. I think I've said everything I meant to say, and I mean, as I mentioned, that did happen very early in the video. But regardless, I will wrap up. So if you liked the video, do whatever it is that you'd normally do, whether that be liking it or not. I would of course prefer if you liked it, but I can't make you do that, so you know, just do as you would normally do. And if you would like to subscribe, it is the same deal. Do it or don't. I would prefer if you did, but you don't have to. You've watched this much of the video, which is more than most. So yeah, if you would still like to subscribe, you know where the subscribe button is. It's below the video. But anyways, I didn't need to mention that, but I chose to because I'm a nice guy like that. If you have a suggestion for what you'd like to see me draw in the future, you could leave a comment, politely worded, if you must. I have no issue with it, but just do it politely. If you're going to do it, that's how I prefer it done. And yeah, if you choose to watch the next video, I will see you next time. So with all that said, that is us. I'll say goodbye and I will leave you. So, bye-bye.